we had this huge untapped learning that we had with the world tour riders where we're like, if I could take all of this knowledge and then make it more accessible to the guy or the gal that's out there doing their first triathlon or their first marathon, for someone that didn't know what they were doing to start with, someone might take off 30 or 45 minutes off of a marathon. And so how can we share this super elite knowledge, but make it approachable and understandable to the everyday athlete?
Welcome back to the Fitt Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Veneri. Today I'm joined by Matt Johnson, founder of the Feed, a curated sports nutrition platform. In this episode, we talk about building a trusted resource for endurance athletes. Matt explains the difference between performance nutrition and wellness supplements. Plus, we cover why personalization and education are key to creating customer loyalty. Let's get into it. Hi, Matt. Welcome to Fitt Insider. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, looking forward to chatting today. And I think before we kind of get into it, maybe just introduce yourself and tell us about the Feed.
Yeah, so I'm the founder of the Feed, and the Feed is an online marketplace for, everything sort of the endurance athlete needs to support their training, racing, and lifestyle. Our primary categories are nutrition, supplements, recovery gear, those kinds of things. And so you can picture it as like what is to the strength world, you might go into a GNC or bodybuilding.com. This is, the equivalent for an endurance athlete. And it's a healthy dose of sort of education on what to use, how to use it, sort of bring people up the learning curve of, what performance nutrition is. And then we have, a massive selection of products for them to choose from.
Yeah, I'm a big fan and love kind of checking out the site, seeing not only from the products and the nutrition and the supplements, but also you mentioned this kind of education and content piece, which I think is really thoughtfully done. And obviously you kind of come to it very organically, naturally into this space. You have a background kind of in the competitive endurance sports, adventure sports, all sorts of different things. So can you just talk about when the Feed actually started and maybe how your experience led you into that?
Yeah, it was, it's obviously the overused adage of, figure out what you love and make it into a business. And so I grew up as a, endurance athlete, racing my bike in Europe, and then quickly got into tech. I started a e-commerce business in sort of the late 90s that sold college textbooks online. And that was sort of my business school education, funded by VC dollars. And, we grew this, it was a wild time where we went from, 0 to like 30 million in revenue selling books in 18 months. And, it was a real roller coaster of a lesson in the e-commerce space. And then I was out of e-commerce for many years, and then, started to get back into cycling, sort of 10 years later, and said, I sort of have a passion for this. I grew up in this. And, we wound up starting, two guys were starting a world tour cycling team, and said, just as they were getting started, you want to join us? You want to run the business side, the marketing side. And then I participated, of course, in a lot on the sports science side. And that company was called Slipstream Sports. And it was, but more known in the public as what is the Garmin cycling team. And then we were the Garmin Cervelo cycling team. And then we were the Cannondale cycling team. And now it's the EF Education First cycling team, and continues to go today. I ran it for about 10 years with my partner, JV, or Jonathan Botters. And then we, when EF bought the company, I sort of helped them transition it, or bought the team, I should say. They became the sponsor and then bought the team. I transitioned it because I had this little sort of pet project that we had started, a few years earlier, and it was sort of nascent, but really starting to show promise. And it was really like, I wanted to spend more time on it. And that was the Feed.
Yeah, it's awesome. And you say kind of nascent pet project. What year was that, or how long has it been now?
We started in like 2013, and it was, honestly, if I had looked at it more carefully, I probably never would have done it, because it would make no business sense whatsoever selling like $1 gels or $1 Cliff Bars. When you add up what the margin is, you add up what it costs to pick and pack that, you add up what it costs to ship it, and you have like a $35 AOV way back then. Like, that was a terrible business idea. idea. I should never, ever have done it. But I sort of put too much money into it, and I wasn't really running it because I still had, interest in a few tech businesses, and I was running the cycling team. So I was really, I guess the dumb money funding it, and had some really great guys that sort of started it and did a great job building loyalty and building the brand, but weren't necessarily scaling it to sort of what the potential was. And I kept saying, I think there's a massive potential here. We've got to expand products. We got to, really double down on education. And, around 2017, after the business had sort of been, kicking along, we said, let's really like just go all in and sort of make this into something. And so we already, the advantage was we had a bit of a head start. We had some vendor relationship. Again, that business was a fraction. We probably do, in half a day what we would do, or in a day what we would do in a
Wow.
month, back then. And then, new team came in place and really sort of looked at the entire life cycle of what that endurance athlete, and all athletes, but,
Mhm.
in particular, we knew the endurance athlete space, authentically. And, around 2017 is really when we started to hit our stride.
Yeah, and so even thinking about like that transition, you talked about, margins weren't super great, and there wasn't a lot of focus on the business, but you knew there was something there, both from your passion for it and just kind of looking at the overall market. How did it transition from kind of getting over that hump? Was there an inflection point, whether it was internally at the company or in the market, or did you just kind of will it into existence to get it to a place where, and you can kind of describe like how big, or how you would quantify how big the business or team is today, that it's like definitely moving in the right direction?
Yeah, we've gone from, I would say, really about 20 people, even, a little over a year ago, to about 80 people now.
Wow.
So it's really, exploded. Now, we were probably a little understaffed back then. We, like, our old office, like, I didn't want to rent two offices, and I think it was about a 4,000 square foot office, and we had only about 2,000 square foot of that was fulfillment space. And that year we did 105,000 orders out of 2,000 square feet. Every day we had to
Wow.
open up the parking lot with tents to store the boxes before UPS came to pick them up. And then we had inventory stored like all over the neighborhood at little places we could rent. And we were like, every day we are like, I got to go over there and get that. It's like, it was a full-time job. Now it's a 45,000 square foot facilities. We're installing, robotic automation now for all the shelving and moving the units around. It's like a whole other level, but we went as far as we could go to really keep the cost in check, and really sort of run a break even, or just losing a very little bit amount of money, until we could sort of find what was the secret sauce, what was that sort of made it work with our consumers, and where we really started to see the big growth.
Yeah, when you like thinking about the market, it because you live it. And then, there's a period of time I was into triathlon and ultra marathon, and, transitioning in my case from football and a strength training background into endurance sports. Is like nutrition is such a learning curve. When people say that you bonk or you hit the wall or whatever, it's like you don't really have that in the same way in like a strength training sport, or a fast twitch sport like you do in endurance sports. So I definitely see from like the education side and the knowledge base that required to go into that. But how do you take that? And I've heard you talk about it, on I think a couple different podcasts. Your level of knowledge and expertise around this fueling and supplementation and all the ins and outs, but then make that accessible to somebody like you said, endurance athlete, or just kind of like fitness seeker, casual exerciser.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. There's maybe two answers there. One is that is really the genesis of the business. So when I was running the cycling team, why we got started was I would bring the riders on charity events or sponsors. We'd go to Garmin headquarters, or we would go on, this big ride, in the fall, in the off season, to support some charity. And we'd do these like town hall type meetings with the participants or the employees at the company. And the majority of the questions always were like, when do I take that gel thing? What are these things for? Like, how much do you guys actually eat? And it was amazing how many questions were related to what I call performance nutrition, which is before, during, and after. So we're not really, talking about breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but like, what are you doing specifically to support that training or that workout? And there was a huge knowledge gap in the marketplace. But at the same time, we had this huge, sort of untapped learning that we had with the world tour riders where we're like, hey, if I could take all of this knowledge and then make it more accessible to the guy or the gal that's out there doing their first triathlon or their first marathon. Oh my God. Like we see a difference at the super elite that already have it pretty well dialed in, and small changes have huge advantages for them. For someone that didn't know what they were doing to start with, the difference is massive. Like, someone might take off 30 or 45 minutes off of a marathon, start to hit their goal times without training more, right? They're already, that was the irony, is they're already putting all the time in, they're already putting the effort in, but they just weren't fueling properly. And so how can we make that just more efficient and share the super elite knowledge, but make it approachable and understandable, to the everyday athlete?
Yeah, I think there's so many brands that kind of have this concept that they want to do that, and we've like previously talked about it as like trickle down health, or
Mhm.
taking this high performance and using that technology or the knowledge or the nutrition, whatever, and like slowly over time implementing that into like a more consumer market. And sometimes that happens very organically, and sometimes it happens very thoughtfully. But when you go to the feed, I think from like the branding to how the site is laid out, the navigation, like typically the experience of, well, really shopping for almost anything online at this point, but
Yeah.
especially shopping for like supplements or anything performance related, it's just like it's so overwhelming. And I can't imagine as somebody walking into that kind of cold or for the first time figuring out how to do that. So what went into the, even from like the design to how it's curated to how you select brands, that somebody goes there and they basically know like, oh, a huge portion of the work is already done for me and I just need to like follow through with this journey.
Yeah, well, I think while we sell a lot of stuff, we don't sell everything. And I think the reason is, I feel like I have to be able to tell a story to our community, that of why I'm interested in this product or why this product is different than, all the other brands or products that we have in these categories. And if I can't tell like an authentic story, it's not worth carrying it. You know what I mean? So we pass on more brands that we bring on board these days, just because if we feel like we can't be helpful and this product doesn't have a differentiated angle, it doesn't mean that it's better than all the other ones, but it could be different, right? And appeal to a different, kind of athlete, different use case scenario, different kind of energy needs, whatever the product is. Then it works, right? And then it fits sort of this family of curated products. So again, we want to carry a lot. We want to be the one-stop shop to get whatever you need, but we don't necessarily, just take anything. So there's a heavy curation up front, and that actually makes our job much easier, because then it makes it much easier to market those products, to tell the story of those products, to share when people call into customer service how those products work. I think we do an okay job educating that first time consumer. Most of our customers say we do a great job, but we really feel like there's more we can do. Like that's a major focus for us, is like, how do we take the person that's just starting out and really not overwhelm them, not fill their shopping cart with too much stuff and make it really expensive and they have a bunch of stuff that is wasted. We would much prefer someone run out of stuff at, day 28 and then come back to us on day 30 to purchase again, than have too much stuff for 90 days, right? And then like, have it go, bad in the pantry. We try to give people the right sort of starting point, and then evolve their understanding and their fueling strategies, from there as they stick around with us as athletes.
And kind of down that path, if you think about, and I'm sure this has evolved over time and will continue to in the future, how are you reaching consumers, new consumers? What channels maybe are working? I know the content piece is part of that, and doing an excellent job, especially it's within the kind of endurance community, right? Word of mouth goes a long way, so
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of referrals, people talking about it, kind of athletes endorsing it or talking about it. But maybe just what's working, and how do you see that kind of acquisition evolving?
Yeah, because we were, self-funded up until sort of last year, we got, my goal of this was to really have a self-funded sort of $100 million e-commerce business. That was the goal.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I didn't get there. And we did bring in a great partner, not a fund, individual, that had started the brand Vega, and, successfully sold it. So himself and his sort of family office came in and sort of partnered with us. And we were just at the point where we were planning for growth, and we used to be able to plan like, maybe 60, 90 days ahead. And we're like, wait, when you're growing, a $20 million jump in this short period of time, like I can't do that. And like I needed to plan 9 to 12 months ahead, to have the infrastructure and the team. So I was like, I can't just cash flow this anymore. Like we need to actually like plan on this a little bit. But one of the ways that I think they were interested is we weren't heavily marketing spenders. Like because it was all my own money, I was super impatient. I was like, I want to like not only make back my money on the first order, but also, maybe make a little bit of money too on that first order. And so we were just like, I guess, super impatient with a lot of our programs where everyone else, a lot of these D2C brands that have come up in the last 5 years, like they were spending 40%, 50%, 80% of their revenue on marketing and then having phenomenal growth curves. And a lot of them have come to us in the last 6, 12 months to get bought. And I'm like, I'm not even sure what we're buying because like you really were just buying revenue. You weren't necessarily building, loyalty or, letting the brand, find its place in the market. And so I guess it would sort of look like we were maybe missing on the hyper growth side when maybe we should have been spending more, but we spend like less than 8% of gross revenue on marketing. And so there's a lot of word of mouth. There's a lot of education. It's, a lot of nurturing, very, very high conversion rates for people that do visit us and like probably best in class retention, that's out there. Like people literally stick along forever.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you kind of not only make it easy, right, from the curation piece to the experience piece to the education piece, but to some extent, where else would they go to get that level of curation,
Yeah.
expertise, and kind of knowledge? So it's a good spot to be in.
Well, I joked that like the fact that it was such a terrible business idea to start with, it wound up becoming our greatest asset because no one else wanted to figure out the space. And, we were sort of like, we got in and I was like, oh, it's too late to back out. I can't let this fail. We gotta crack the code of figuring that out. And, it's interesting. That was everything we did. It was like, let's find the best new brand in Europe or another part of the world and bring it to the US where we don't have it available. So like, bringing in these really unique products. And, we've done that now, half dozen times, if not more, where we're like the first to introduce it into the US market. We become the biggest retailer for that company globally, and we really become a partner for them. But it's also all the way down to the warehouse. Like we wrote all like it's created my background's in software. And so like all the warehouse system, the pick, pack, and ship system, everything, it's all about it's all written by us. But what it's allowed us to do is be really, really efficient because our average box has 10 picks in it. And that's the average
Mm.
box. Like we'll have many boxes that have, 30 or 40 items. If you were at like a 3PL or even an Amazon would go nuts with that many individual items going into a box. And the reason for that is we sell a lot of stuff as single serves because I personally just get flavor fatigue. And I was just riding yesterday and I was eating these chews that I'll remain nameless. They're one of my favorite ones. And I was like, God, I'm actually sort of getting sick of this. Like I had a big box of 24 on my counter. I've been using them every day. I was like, I'm going to switch this up. Like you just get bored of either the flavor or the brand and you want to rotate and you don't necessarily want to buy 12 or 24 of them. So we let people buy one of everything. So it drives a huge amount of picks, but it creates this great experience for the consumer where I can mix brands, I can try new flavors, I can try out a new product that comes out without a big commitment and worried that I'm not going to like it. And so it was one of the value props, but then we had to write systems to handle that. And that's at this point given us this huge competitive advantage. Our goal is to ship every order within like 2 hours of getting it.
Yeah, it's a growing and kind of ever evolving complication of how you do this. It sounds like getting it figured out now from like owning the kind of distribution of this, but certainly a big lift to get it there. As you were talking about it, something that came to mind was even the last couple years during COVID, it was kind of like a unique time. Well, obviously for the world, but in particular for like endurance sports and even like outdoor activities, recreation. It was kind of like, okay, there's
Yeah.
not races anymore. So the kind of racing aspect went away, but people certainly went outside. They bought bicycles, they got trainers, they continued that training aspect of it. And then now, kind of hopefully at the tail end of this, you just went into Tour de France season, which is another huge peak. So, what has that roller coaster been like?
That's a great question. I was actually just working on that earlier this week. So, we thought we did COVID was tricky, and then supply chain was tricky.
Right.
And, the lack of events, people staying home, we saw a huge drop off in the nutrition business, but a huge increase in the supplement and sort of wellness side of
Mm.
the business. Right. So that, the fact that we were diverse enough, nothing really changed. We stayed on the exact same trajectory in terms of growth through COVID, but no better, no worse. And I would say if you asked me this a year ago, I would say, oh, I think we did well in COVID. Like, we benefited from it. But now what's happened since April of this year, it's been like, you now look at the chart and it's like this, and now it's a hockey stick. It's
Wow.
just absolutely boomed post COVID. And I don't think I even realized that impact until the end of July of this year, where I could really see like the scale of, how it's taken off. So we're getting this massive post COVID bump from all those people that bought bikes and started running and doing stuff because we're in the consumable space, unlike the hard goods space where they already bought the bike or the indoor bike or whatever they're doing. Now they're using it and they're buying our products to sort of fuel that training and getting more out of what they're doing already. So it's been crazy to see this post COVID bump. And this is all like totally new. And I'm sure other people in the fitness space are seeing something similar. And the return of events probably also has a lot to do with that as well.
Yeah, I think in particular in the fitness space, there's like still a lot of maybe fits and starts. It's like we think we have it figured out, and then this maybe shifted a little bit, and then
Yeah.
are people buying this? Are they going there? So it will take a little bit, but I think one of the you know positive outcomes, if you could frame it that way, from COVID is just the number of people who kind of discovered outdoor recreation,
Yeah.
cycling, hiking, like anything now that hopefully becomes way more of a lifestyle than maybe just somebody who was doing it for a race or a one time kind of thing. Or in the case of fitness, sometimes like they bought it, and to your point, like whether they use it or not, like we really don't know.
I think the total available market is probably like 3 to 4 times what it was in like 2018, 2019. Like it was already growing, right? More people were
Mhm.
running, more people were riding, more people were doing adventure sort of, opportunities, more people were doing triathlons, and that's growing. But I think COVID took that from maybe a bit niche, sort of marketplace, really pushed it into the mainstream. And it's just exponentially growing on itself. So I think we're now dealing with, a multi-billion-dollar marketplace that was, maybe a few $100 million marketplace, 3, 4 years ago.
Yeah, and then in terms of how or what that means for the platform, you mentioned this kind of like wellness, consumables, supplement growing quickly, being potentially untapped relative to the market you're serving now. I love the way that you framed it from like performance nutrition, because oftentimes you hear when people just say like supplements and they kind of use it very vaguely. It's like, well, do we need this? What do we use it for? What's the outcome? But performance nutrition is pretty direct. So how do you think about maintaining the focus on that kind of core consumer or performance nutrition while saying like, hey, there's this whole wellness kind of market that we can lean into?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, obviously, I think there's a overlap between the athlete and endurance-minded person and their wellness focus. So we're sort of learning from them about what the broader wellness marketplace is. I guess we're also skeptical, of the traditional marketing around the supplement space. And so we approach supplements from a very different perspective, which is what can we do that is efficacious? What can we do that like there's no question that there's, this is the top best quality of product. So we didn't go super broad in that, but we went really deep on quality. Definitely more expensive. We had world tour cycling teams and trainers and doctors from all over the world saying, listen, I read this study that say collagen, is great for, potentially preventing soft tissue injuries and, prophylactically ahead of time. But the formula that was used in the clinical trial was, A, B, and C ingredient. And I can't go buy a product that has A, B, C ingredient. Like, why can't you get that for me? And so the super elite were telling us that. And we're like, that's a really good question. Why can't you get that same product that was used in the trial? And normally the answer is always like, it's a patented formula because that's how they afforded to do the clinical trial to begin with. And then it was too expensive. So everyone went with generics and sort of then, attached this trial or study to something that's not even the same product. And we're like, well, why doesn't that exist? And so we started sourcing stuff that would like match the clinical trials, for example, in supplements. And that was really just the focus. And then the other thing, because I'm also not good at sticking with supplements, I saw what Amazon was doing with like PillPack, and I'd love that business, right? Like the idea of getting a daily pouch instead of a bunch of pill bottles. And I was like, well, why can't we do that for athletes? Like, but I don't want to just give them generics. Like I want to give them these same high quality products that we're selling, but I want to change the format. And so we launched this thing called Feed Formulas, which is you get a really nice countertop box every month. We take each square, we slice them for you. They're there individually. So, and you can create your own formula. So you can pick from like 70 different supplements that we have of what is in your routine. And that was just like what we were really trying to do is add value in the chain. Like we can sell it to you and we can sell you the same bottle, but wouldn't it be better if we could like insert ourselves and say, hey, we're going to repackage this, let you combine these 3 supplements and make it more convenient. And then what we realized is people were sticking with it, where we would see this fall off where someone might do it for a month or two and then they just get tired of it or they forget to do it and they fall out of the routine. Once they had the convenience of that pouch, it actually made the product more effective, not because it made the supplement better, but because people actually took it on a regular basis. That was more important for the results that they were getting than anything else. Anyway, so we keep finding things that really is like our personal problems, and then we focus on trying to solve those. And then we're like, I hope someone else also had that problem, and sometimes they do, and most of the times they do, and we go from there.
Yeah, that's an awesome insight. Maybe a couple more questions as we get towards the end of the conversation here. One related to what you were just talking about there. How do you think about white labeling, or just, hey, we'll release our own version of this, and now you have your kind of in-house brand?
So I think it's important, like from a business standpoint, obviously you consider it like, can I increase margin, that way, and the delta's not insignificant. We generally, have sort of 50%, gross margins on average across the board. And maybe in a private label, you get it to 65 or even 70%. So there's a business reason to consider it. But what we haven't done and what we won't do is create a feed branded product that's like the generic and sell it for less. That's just not really that interesting to me. So we focus where we have looked at private label is where we think there's a gap in the marketplace. And, it has turned out, not on purpose, but, it has turned out a lot of times that it's a more expensive product that is a higher quality product, where we just think that someone wasn't realizing that there was more ability of the consumer to spend if you could give them a better product. And I'm not saying that's universally how we'll approach it, but where we see those opportunities, we really dive into it. So, first party brands are about 25% of our revenue now and growing, double, like really quickly for us. But that's all a question of like, we don't really even set a goal. We don't say like, oh, we're going to go into this and it has to be a $5 million business on its own. We're like, is this solving a problem that we have? And do we want this product? And can we actually get it to market and maintain the quality and be different than what we're selling now? Because what I don't want to do is launch a product that just competes with the brands that we're already selling. We'd never want to do that. We always want to carve out a different part of the marketplace that is just not being served.
Yeah, it's super smart to think of it more from the framework that you laid out, like solving a problem and like filling the void versus like trying to compete or drive down pricing, which ultimately upsets kind of the
Yeah.
balance within the marketplace. So,
Yeah.
looking ahead here before we wrap up, we were kind of talking a little bit offline about this, and I think about it in terms of just maybe all the things selfishly that I'm passionate about, from like recovery to like this health optimization to strength training. And obviously you have the kind of endurance angle covered, but then there's other really great takes on like this highly curated marketplace, from like a Huckberry, from like a men's interest standpoint, or even like a super smart like media play like a Gear Patrol, right? Which you do elements of that within the platform.
Yeah.
How do you think about evolving the feed and just the opportunity? Because you did kind of say like, oh, nobody else wanted to figure this out
Yeah.
for this particular market, and we spent all this time figuring out. But in terms of where you think it's can go or where you want it to go, what does that look like?
Well, there's no bigger probably consumer and fan of Huckberry. I don't really like shopping either. But I love actually going on there. It's the only place I shop. So I definitely probably steal a lot of ideas from what they're doing in their space. And I think they're super creative, what they're doing. So we pull some inspiration from there for sure. What is the right expression? It's the purest form of flattery. Yeah. So thank you to those guys. But we think of it right now. I think the real play is personalization. No two athletes are the same, right? Your nutritional needs are going to be different than the next athlete next to you. I can't necessarily prescribe the exact same, product without knowing your unique needs. And so where we're really going to win is in personalization. And we have elements of that. Some is about the experience. Some is about how we fulfill the product, and some is how we educate the product. So I'll lay out an example. And this is how I think we win in the long run and create differentiated value. If you can buy the same hydration from us or for someone else, you are getting the same product, right? We can probably get it you better, and we can combine it with more other stuff you're liking, and maybe we can sell it to you as singles. But now we make every box, that the product goes in specific to that order so that we have no waste from an environmental standpoint. We now create a feed formula if you're ordering supplements. So you now can get your stuff in individual daily serving pouches as opposed to a whole bunch of bottles cluttering your counter and having to count pills every morning. We are more on a promotional side thing. We put a whole infrastructure in place to print water bottles. So we used to give out a lot of water bottles with orders. We're like, what would be better is if we could put Joe's name on the water bottle, right? Or Fitt Insider. We'll brand the bottle to you. Or a lot of people have been using it with like words of motivation, or they're giving it to friends doing an event and saying like, you've got this, motivation to these bottles. So now you can always get a totally personalized bottle. And then we have a whole printing press that's going live shortly where you're getting a booklet that's a pretty substantial booklet on every product in your order and educating you on that product, how to use that product, giving you information specific to your order. So everything is, and we try to produce all that stuff within 2 hours of that order being placed. So it's really meant to be like real time. And so what we feel is that I don't know, I guess it's the strategic value in the larger, or what we're betting on is people will appreciate a personalized, experience in this space. And that all really comes for free. And, in exchange, we're asking for your loyalty, in terms of being a consumer.
Yeah, I think that paints a very clear kind of vision and differentiation in terms of, I think, how a lot of people might be thinking about it. So it's super exciting to think about how that continues to evolve. And yeah, actually wrapping up, we'll get you out of here on this. I think with that, a lot of the things we talked about today, if somebody wanted to check it out, follow along, where would you point them?
Yeah, thefeed.com. That's the home, and you'll find everything you need from there. If you have questions, email us. You can even email me directly, Matt J at the feed. And we've got a whole team of coaches that I work with every day on what advice are we giving? How are we helping people put a nutrition plan together? And again, maybe we're silly, but we don't charge for any of that. That's all free. That's on us. And we just want to help you sort of get started. So, chat with us, call us, you talk to a live person. We actually pick up the phone, email us if that's more convenient, whatever you prefer. Chat now is probably dominating. I bet you about 80% of the people like just want an immediate answer and just chat with us. And, our goal is within 20 seconds to answer every chat. And, you've got a dedicated person that's not doing 5 chats at the same time. And they're there with you to sort of help you with your experience. If you have questions, we're also can help you that way.
Yeah, another level of that personalization you talked about
Yeah.
in education. So yeah, thanks for making time, Matt. I definitely hope folks check it out, and thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.